Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I am here with another Doodlebug 6x6 paper pad video. These are easily the most requested videos on my channel, but they are pretty time consuming, so I don't get a chance to do them often. It involves doing a really lengthy voiceover as well, so I gotta find like a big chunk of time to do that, and then of course make all the cards. So sorry that they're few and far between, but I hope that you enjoyed this one. I am using the Party Time 6x6 paper pad. There is a boy version and a girl version of the paper pad, in the sense that there are little boy characters on this paper pad and there are little girl characters on the other one. I opted for the little boy paper pad because a lot of the organizations that I donate to request boy cards, as they just tend to get more girl cards. This is a birthday paper pad, and some organizations don't accept birthday cards. So I had these ones will probably go to Cards for Soldiers, which sends greeting cards to soldiers that they can use to send notes back home. And there, if you are familiar with Operation Right Home, that was run by Sandy Allnock and has since stopped, but it was a very similar sort of idea. I will leave you links in the video description to my card drive resources page on my blog that gives you places you can donate your cards if that's something you feel so inclined to do. And I have jokes on there that coordinate with a lot of Doodlebug pads and just sort of general themes like dinosaurs and pirates and under the sea. I think there's like a mermaid one, and all the holidays, so that you can use those to put inside your cards. All right, so I'm going to try to focus a little bit more on the paper pad in the tutorial now. Doodlebug papers are double-sided, and there's usually 2 of each sheet. So this collection has 24 double-sided pieces of cardstock. And my goal is always to make at least the number of cards as there are pieces of cardstock. So since there are 24 pieces of cardstock, my goal would be to generally make 24 cards when I use the whole paper pad. I did make 31, and I did add some additional things to the paper pad. I am not going to explain every single measurement and cut as I make it. If you're not familiar with my videos, you can go to my blog, which will be in the video description. You'll see a still picture of every card and the exact measurements for each card, so that you could, kind of sit there with the paper pad and you could recreate them almost exactly if you wanted to. But I wanted to say I did supplement a few things this time. So here's the 4 cardstocks, colors that I used. I had a pack of cardstock from Recollections, which is sold at Michael's. It's 110-pound cardstock. I didn't buy it with this paper pad in mind. However, I bought it for another project, and I had a lot left over, and I thought it worked well. When I first started working with Doodlebug, these little cut-aparts, there's like a sheet of 6x6 that you can cut, and they're 1.5 by 2.5. So I think there's like 12 of them or something on that sheet. They used to be a lot bigger. And so I've started, now that they're a little bit smaller, and you get more of them, of course, but now that they're smaller, I have been backing them with cardstock more often. And so I knew I needed some cardstock for that. And then I decided, since I had the pack, I would use it for some other things. Like I made some card bases blue or yellow or some of the other colors that were in there. I try not to use many extra supplies, in part because I want newer crafters and I mean, I guess it's not really much about newer, but like I want people to see that you don't need a million supplies to make a bunch of cards. And I think that Doodlebug is an excellent paper pad for showing that, because those little cut-aparts have sentiments and cute little characters on them, and so you don't really need to add anything. You do need something for your card base. And some extra colored cardstock can be pretty helpful, but you don't need the really good expensive stuff, since it's just going to be little mats and things like that. I will say for card bases, I do recommend the higher quality stuff. I really don't like thin card bases just because they just kind of floppy and they don't stand very well for your recipient. When I'm working with a 6x6 pattern paper pad, something that I like to do is, like a common size that I cut them to, is just under a card base size. So all of my cards today are A2. I don't always do all A2, but mostly A2. And that would be, you take an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and you cut it in half, and then you fold each of those halves in half, and you'll be working with a card front that is 5.5 by 4.25. And so then I cut my paper to 4 by 5.25, and it leaves you with a 2 by 6 strip of paper, which was, you can actually just see those two sides. It's a 2 by 6 strip of paper and a 4 by 1.75 or 1 3/4 sheet or strip. And so you'll see those measurements a lot on my blog, because that's when when you chop paper down, you result in those scraps of sorts. So like this strip of Happy Birthday that's behind the plaid, it's going right over the elephant pattern paper. That is just that sort of standard scrap that would have been cut off the top. And so I try to pick sizes of I try to cut things to sizes that will leave me with usable pieces, not just random things. Like, I don't follow any sketch exactly and take their measurements. I just use the sketches for ideas and try to make something that will actually use the sizes of paper that I have. So for instance here, I have those 2 by 6 inch strips that I cut off and I just used on cards, the bigger piece that was left. But I want this to look like I still have a big piece of puppy paper and a big piece of elephant paper. So what I've done here, and what I've done very often in 6x6 paper pad tutorials, is I'll take those 2 strips and I will take a different strip and tape it over the seam. So once it's taped over the seam, it looks like one big piece of pattern paper, but of course it's not. And that's a great way of using up both kinds of scraps to seal up those seams. For many of the cards that I do at the beginning of the video, I am using the cut aparts, and I'm using just one and letting it have a, because it has that cardstock backer, it tends to have enough visual weight to carry the card if you use some other things with it, but they are a little small. So sometimes it can be nice to add 2 or 3 or something like that to give it a bit more going on. There is, in every Doodlebug pattern paper pack pad, whatever, a pattern on one side only that has all these stripes, and it has character stripes and word stripes, and I always find that pattern paper challenging to use, and I often just use the back of it if I find that to be more accommodating. And I will say, I've already kind of talked about why Doodlebug paper is so good, but one of the reasons is that that other side is always kind of going to be your saving grace. So another thing here is these collections are meant, or can be meant, for scrapbooking, because there's a 12 by 12 version of all of this in the collection. And so one of these pattern papers on the back had scrapbooking things like, oh, your birthday wish list, or I forget what some of the other things were, top 5 moments or something, which would be perfect for scrapbooking but don't really work in this instance. Flip it over, use the other side. Sometimes you can make them work, and I encourage you to get creative, but that's for me always kind of the saving grace. The single-sided papers, if they intimidate me, because it's if you have one that just doesn't work for you, obviously don't use it. That's fine. You don't have to use every scrap. But in these videos, I really do try to show you how much you can get out of it. So what I was just showing you there with the party hat paper is those that when you cut this sort of standard thing, what are those other little scraps? So a lot of times if I'm cutting a piece, I'll actually be sort of designing 2 cards at the same time. And I'll be like, okay, so I know that I have this party hat paper and this stripy paper, and I think they go really well together. So I'm going to plan to use the big piece of party hat paper with the little piece of striped paper and just kind of like get it all done. A couple other things that I wanted to mention about my process. I do use sketches, as I said earlier, but I don't use them exactly. I have a binder with like page protectors where I printed the MFT sketches and I placed them in the binder, and then I printed other sketches from different sources, but MFT is like I really like their sketches. So it's a big place I printed them from. And I just flip through to get some ideas. And if I'm really sticking closely to a sketch, I will usually link that as well. So I know some people do these tutorials and they follow the sketches exactly, or they have measurements for the sketches and all that. It's just, it makes the thing a little bit more complicated for me than because I just, it's not the way my brain works. But there, like I said, there are many other talented people who make 6x6 paper pad tutorials, or just even if they don't make like the whole paper pad, they like show so many cool card ideas for Doodlebug and other paper pad companies too. So, just get all the ideas. Anyway, I have sometimes in the past supplemented the paper pad with the coordinating stickers from Doodlebug. And I do recommend that. I like doing that because they're really cheap. They're usually a couple bucks for the sticker sheet, and it allows you to really kind of stretch out and use everything. But this time I decided to go with the stamp set. Couple reasons. Stamp sets are new. I have never used one before because most of the paper pads I've done in the past, there wasn't even a stamp set available for it. But this time there was, and I picked it because I wanted to show something different, but also I was quite pleased that Doodlebug included a variety in the stamp set. So there's 2 stamp sets for this collection. There's one with the animals and then one with the little boys. Obviously, I have the one with the little boys. And you saw that I colored up a whole bunch of them. I colored 4 of each image in the stamp set. And I liked that they included a little curly-haired boy because you can color that little boy to be black. And a lot of times stamp sets include straight hair only for boys and long straight hair, which is like, honestly, like I used to work with kids. I knew very few boys with like long straight hair. Like a lot of boys actually have like really close crew cuts and stuff too, which I understand is a little hard to illustrate, but it can be really hard to find stamps that make sense to color as black because they don't have long straight hair. So I was really happy to see that curly haired version, and I wanted to make sure that my cards include diversity. If you're only making cards for your relatives, then pick whatever stamps that look like your relatives. But since I'm making cards that I donate and go to different people around the country, the world, I would just want my stamps to reflect all the different kinds of people who will be receiving my cards. A little, I guess, shameless self-plug here, but on my Instagram, I have actually been coloring a lot of black characters because I wanted to challenge myself and learn more about coloring and make sure my cards are a little bit more representative, etc. So if you want ideas or you want to see stamps that make sense in that sense, that are appropriate for that, or how to make your stamps work for that, there's some card ideas on there. And there are, but of course, there's actually like a bunch of super talented crafters who are doing the same as well. Pocono Pam does a lot with that in terms of she shows you how to add afros and how to change hair on stamps to make natural black hair. Sandy Alnock has also shared a lot about the human rainbow, and check out that hashtag on Instagram. All right, back to the design. Sorry about my little off-track tangent there. another super nice thing, because this is all about Doodlebug paper, about Doodlebug paper pads, is that they include these like semi-solids. So this is actually a piece of orange patterned paper, but it's just like a really simple, subtle pattern of like dark orange stripes on a lighter orange background or something like that. Or it might be like a hex, something. It's really, really simple. And there's a yellow one that's like that in the pattern paper pad as well. So when I have those, I tend to try to cut them in such a way that I can use the entire sheet, and then I can use those for things like this where I'm like creating a little, even if I'm doing with the cut aparts, like if I'm just trying to create a little scene, or stickers. The cut aparts I just do on the solids, cardstocks usually. But when I use the stickers, I'll do the same thing, because these are basically stickers now that I've cut them out. And I like that option, but I don't want to leave a bunch of scraps, because here I am towards the end of the paper pad, and that's what I tend to do. I'd make all the pattern paper pieces first, and then I use my stickers on the last one. And here I'm using my stamps on like the last couple cards. So I don't want to create scraps if I don't have to. When you're not trying to create scraps, but you want little panels to create little scenes on, or little focal panels, 3x3 is awesome, because you can get 4 3x3s, and then you can make 4 of the same card design, just switch up the pattern papers, or you can, obviously make different ones, but the 3x3 is always solid. I also, with the yellow pattern paper coming up, I cut it in half, so it's 3x6, and then I make one 3.5 and one 2.5. And 2.5 by 3 is still big enough that I can get these characters on it. It's not too small. It's still, big enough to have some weight on the final card. So here's that yellow sort of hatched pattern paper. You can see it. The pattern's really subtle, but it is there. And also, my lighting is not super professional or anything like that, so it's not as obvious. But yeah, I'll cut it at 3.5 and 2.5. And so big enough, but no scraps. Like, those are going to just be used, and I'm not going to be like, ooh, I have this little chunk of yellow to use up somewhere. So I think I mentioned this earlier, but if I haven't, or you didn't know, if you've seen these before, you know it. I am creating 2 of most cards, because there are 2 of most patterns. So I'm making 31 cards. So when you go over to my blog, there will be all 31 cards, sort of, except for that, like if I made 2, I'm just going to show you the picture of one of them, tell you I made 2, and tell you the measurements. So a lot of times they're going to be designing around the idea that there should be 2 of each one. So here, it's not 2 of the exact same card, because I'm using the ice cream pattern paper on one with the sprinkles, and the other one I'm using the blue and this, like, I don't know, this crazy pattern paper with all kinds of the images in the background. But I'm going to make the little boy's panel the same. So he's going to be eating his ice pop and hanging out by the piñata here. And I recommend that for when you're kind of getting towards the end, and, for whatever reason you're left with 2 different sheets, you can still use the same design on them. When I was coloring the little boys and the different accessories that went with the set, first off, I stamped 4 of everything in the set. So there was like the 3 little boys, and there was like piñatas and cakes and like slices of cake and little confetti poppers and all that. I put it all on one piece of cardstock. I put it in my MISTI. You do not need a MISTI to do this, but it saves time. So any stamping platform, also, it doesn't have to be MISTI, any stamping platform. And then I was able to stamp it 4 times and color a whole bunch of them. And that way, I wanted it to be an even number, because again, I do tend to create 2 of each card. So I didn't want to have to go back and be like, I need one more. But when I was coloring them in, I did color with Copics. I'm not going to show any coloring in the video, just because it would take way too long. And I didn't do anything very special with coloring them, and I'm not very good at coloring on camera, and a bunch of other excuses. But I chose colors directly from the pattern paper, like directly in the sense of The piñata, the same piñata that is in this stamp is also on one of the pieces of pattern paper. And I colored the pattern. Like it was a dark blue and then a light blue and then an orange and then a green. And I just colored the same pattern over on my piñatas because I was like, then I don't have to think about it. It's just going to match. Somebody designed this pattern paper and did all the hard work of thinking of what colors looked well together. So I cheated and I copied off of them. And, you know, sometimes it's fun to make your own decision. And sometimes it's fun to just, you know, enjoy coloring and not have to think too hard about it. I did do a little bit of shading with my Copics, but actually a lot of this isn't even shaded. Like, yeah, the hair and the skin is shaded, but their outfits aren't. They're tiny. Don't drive yourself nuts. Sandy Allnock says that a lot. Like, where like you color certain things really interesting and elaborate, and then don't worry about some of the little bits because no one's gonna look like, is that little star more than one color of yellow? No one's gonna notice that. Just color it a solid yellow. You know, I don't always do that. Sometimes I'm too finicky. We all are guilty of that, I'm sure, but it is a good thing to think about and remember. So this is a one-off card, and this is a perfect example of what to do. So all those scraps. So these are those 4 by 1 3/4 pieces that you get when you cut those big card panels. And I always have them, and I've used them throughout the video, and I always am trying to like, okay, where can I throw a little stripe on this card? But if you have a bunch at the end, they actually tend to work out really well for this very simple card design where you just glue a bunch of the, well, you tape a bunch of the stripes together because glue won't work here. I'm going to use my ATG, I forget what that stands for, something tape gun, advanced maybe, to tape them together. Any tape runner, of course, will work. I did recently try a new really nice quality glue. I had used Ranger Multimedia Matte, which is great quality and dries clear, but I never found a good fine tip nozzle for it. Every one I tried clogged, and I was just getting tired of it. And then I decided to try Barely Arts. I've heard a lot of good things about them, and they come with several tips, including a really fine point, and it has the little pin to put in it, and I've had no clogging issues whatsoever. I was so happy. So if your glue's driving you nuts and you need a new glue, I have nothing but positive things to say about Barely Arts, and I've been using it for about 2 months. So if that's worth anything. Because the theme of this card is use those scraps, I am also using up all the like colored bits. They're obviously not scraps because, you know, it's a whole cake or whatever. But I had these cakes that I still hadn't put on cards. I had this little boy. I had used the other one of him on a different design, a different one-off design. But like I had the little chocolate cakes left, and I had the little confetti swirls, banner ribbons. I guess ribbons. I don't know what they're called, guys. Sorry. And I had like stars and whatever. So I'm like I have that pile of scraps next to me, and I'm doing that always when I'm making cards with my 6x6 paper pad. I'm always sitting that pile of scraps next to me. I'm never pushing them off to the side, because if I push them off to the side, I'll forget about them and we'll stuck at the end with just scraps. I mean, not that we don't have scraps at the end, but like, you know, a big pile of scraps. Like, what am I going to do with these? I should have been using them throughout. The one thing that I do like about doing the stamp set instead of the stickers is the stickers, I don't think they've ever come with sentiments. They might have a sentiment here and there. So I've always had to add sentiments. But when I did the stamp set, I got to add the sentiments in from the stamp set, so I didn't have to like pull out another thing. But it's mixed bag. Like, I think it's kind of cool that I now have this stamp set forever, and I've actually used it outside of the paper pad. But if you are looking to kind of keep your stuff under control and you don't want to have a lot of extra stuff and you really want to be using up your stuff, go with the stickers, because you can really use up the sticker sheet completely. And you might think, oh, well, they don't all fit on the front of my cards. Like, I ran out of design. I have this like random star left or whatever. I didn't do it in this video, but I've shown it in other 6x6 paper pad tutorials. Take all those little stickers and stick them inside the cards as a little extra decoration. And that's what I'll probably do. Like, I don't think I used a single piece of chocolate cake in any of these cards, but I can take that little chocolate cake cut out and glue it on the inside of the card. Just add a little bit of interest there. This is the last card. This is me using any little thing I can get on a card so that nothing has to, I mean, you can, again, just glue them on the inside, but nothing has to go to the recycling bin. I'm just trying to get rid of every little thing. And, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. We're getting to the end, and I've been talking for a long time, and hopefully I've said something useful in all of this babbling at you. That orange piece is a piece of cardstock. It's not the like orange pattern paper or anything. So I was adding a little bit of cardstock towards the end to get things finished up. I'm going to use the 2 piñatas on this card, and I could definitely see using these piñatas again because even though they look really detailed, they're actually super easy to color, and they look really cute. But anyway, I want these piñatas, and I did this last time that I used them with the little boy. I don't want them to just be kind of floating there. They should have a string on them. I'm happy they didn't include a string in the stamp set because like that would just be, I don't know, I actually find that harder to do. I would rather just draw the line than try to stamp it because there's no way I'm going to stamp it straight. I'm probably not going to draw a straight line either, but I can use a ruler and I get a sort of straight line. I want to make it attached to the back of them. Last time I attached it to the head, it doesn't really make sense. It'd be a very lopsided piñata swinging everywhere. But I mean, that's the fun of a piñata, right? Anyway. That after I glue down these guys, oh, that's what I want to tell you. I sometimes, and you've probably heard this tip before if you watched my other videos, but I sometimes pop things up. Like this second piñata might be nice if it like had a little bit of dimension. I don't think I'm going to do it for this one just because of the string, but like a lot of the little boys, I pop them up. You can totally use foam tape, buy foam tape, go for it. But want to save a little money, take all your cardstock scraps. So once I cut all of these out with my scan and cut, I took all those little scraps and I glued them together so they were like doubly thick, and I put that behind instead. So gluing your cardstock scraps together to create foam tape. You have to use thick cardstock or it doesn't really work, but since I use thick cardstock anyway, it does work out for me, and it's a little bit more eco-friendly because you can recycle it. Like a lot of these cards, if you wanted to, when you were done with them, you could put them right in the recycling bin. There's nothing, they're all just paper and glue. So, whatever that's worth. Just kind of flipping through most of the designs here. I did use a lot of white card bases, but I also used some of those colored card bases. When you donate those, you're going to want to put a liner inside of them if somebody's going to write a message, so that they have somewhere to write a message, because that dark blue is going to be really hard to see things on top of. You're probably okay with like the yellow, etc. I will leave you links to the products mentioned, the tutorials, other different shout outs. If I forget a link, please leave me a comment and I will add it in, and I apologize in advance. I gotta remember everything I said. Go to my blog to get all the measurements so that if you want to make similar cards, you can. And thank you so much for taking this time. I hope that some of this was helpful. You learned something along the way. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafting tutorials, including 6x6 paper pads, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. Have an awesome day. Bye.